you, and hello, everyone. On this joyous occasion, anytime we can share the Dharma together, wherever you are in Zoom land or in the Dharma Dhatu, I want to welcome you all and just tell you how much I appreciate you coming here. So before I begin, I'd like to do the opening liturgy, which is the unsurpassed and profound and sublime Dharma is difficult to encounter even in a billion eons. Today we receive, hear, and uphold it, vowing to fathom to the true meaning of the Tathagata. So today we are going to read the last chapter of the Lotus Sutra, and this is our send-off. And the chapter is called the exhortations or the encouragement of Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, well, actually it's great Buddha, which is Puxian, universal worthy in Chinese. And what I'd like to do is first introduce Samantabhadra, because it's quite important to understand what the chapter is about and who is speaking, who is giving their teaching. Because one of the things that is kind of impossible to avoid when you start studying sutras is looking at them as some sort of a narrative, a textbook, or even a novel, where there seems to be a cast of characters, there seems to be a plot. And all of that does exist in a certain way, but the sutra is a lot deeper than just narrative. So when we encounter a bodhisattva like Samantabhadra, we have to understand that everything in the chapter is suffused with his teaching and his presence. And to really appreciate that, to understand and get even a deeper level of meaning and experience, if you will, by learning about Samantabhadra. So Samantabhadra is an Adi Buddha, a primordial Buddha, along with sometimes in the other Buddhas in the five Buddha families, like Vairakana and Amitabha and Magasigi and Akshoba. It's in these very, very deep realms of understanding and experience. So he appears in a number of sutras, and he's often considered the foremost bodhisattva or Buddha of practice. He's in the Samantabhadra Meditation Sutra, the Gandha Vyuha Sutra, which is the last part of the Avatamsaka Sutra. And this is where he is teaching Sudana, who has gone through 53 teachers, and he is helping Sudana realize that what he has come to look for was something that he already had. So he is someone who represents the transformational ability that we all have, our potential. And he is also, there's a Vajrayana visualization exercise called the refuge tree, or the field of merit, where in this kind of visualization practice, the practitioner imagines the Buddhas of the past, present, and future, all the great bodhisattvas, the great arhats, and various other deities, all rising up, and actually there are tankas that show this in the tree. Right at the zenith, at the very top, is Samantabhadra, who represents the unending, the continuous potentiality that we have for Buddhahood. So it's really this is the proper Buddha to send us off from and send us back into our study of the Lotus Sutra. So what I'd like to do is share the screen now. Let me see, I have to bring up this. Let's see. Share screen. And okay. Can everyone see this? Is it big enough? I think. Echo, can you read the sutra here?
A little small.
A little small. Let me see if I can. Better?
That's a little better, yes.
One more?
Try it.
Okay. All right, here we are.
That's
So,
good.
all right. So this is what I'd like to do. Because of the time constraint, I can't really read through the entire chapter. So what I've done is I've put on headings, and then I'll sort of explain what happens in a particular paragraph. I have the Chinese there also for when it becomes relevant. So this is how the sutra begins, and I will read the first paragraph. Right. So at that time, Bodhisattva, universal worthy, famed for his freely exercised transcendental powers, dignity, and virtue, in company with great bodhisattvas in immeasurable, boundless, indescribable numbers, arrived from the east. The lands that he passed through, one and all, quaked and trembled. Jeweled lotus flowers rained down, and immeasurable hundreds, thousands, 10,000, millions of different kinds of music played. In addition, numberless heavenly beings, dragons, yakshas, gandharvas, asuras, garudas, kimnaras, maharagas, human and non-human beings surrounded him in a great assembly, each displaying his dignity, virtue, and transcendental powers. So here we're introduced to Samantabhadra, and Samantabhadra means universal goodness, universal worthy, Pusyen. You know, Shen is a sage, and it's a sage for all times, for all places. And his coming from the east, it's an interesting way of tying up the sutra, because right in the first chapter, the Buddha sits down and goes into the samadhi of innumerable meanings, and he illuminates all the worlds to the east, you know, where the Lotus Sutra is about to be preached. And so here the east is coming back, so to speak, with Samantabhadra. And the things that we see in this first paragraph, you know, it's really beyond most of our understanding to be able to actually visualize this, but we can understand that it is breaking out of all of our cognitive, emotional kinds of understanding. It is truly a remarkable event that's happening right now. And I just want to, so this is the setting. And then here's what happens in this next paragraph is Samantabhadra's obeisance to the Buddha. He comes and he circles around the Buddha 7 times. And he has this question of how to acquire the Lotus Sutra. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And what's really interesting about this is where he says, world honored one, when I was in the land of the Buddha king above jeweled dignity and virtue, another great Buddha, he heard the Lotus Sutra preached in this Saha world, right? He's come from the east, and he's come to listen and accept it. Now, this is kind of interesting if you think of it. How could Samantabhadra not really know about the Lotus Sutra? Why would he have to come and listen to and accept it? And I think you can approach this question by actually looking at the name of the sutra, the Lotus Sutra. In Chinese, it's the Fa Hua Qing, Fa Hua Jing. So the Dharma Flower Sutra. Now, flowers are something that you really can't own a flower. You can't have a flower in perpetuity. They grow, they blossom, and then they wither. But what we're talking about, the true Dharma, the Dharmakaya, has all of that potentiality, and yet it doesn't change either. So what Samantabhadra is doing is he's doing these actions for the sake of all sentient beings. It's not like he has to listen to the Lotus Sutra, but we need it. And we have to look deeply into what the sutra is telling us, looking beyond the words to the Li, which is what Master Dao Sheng called the inner principle, and which I think we can understand as suchness or thusness in and of itself. So that is, in my opinion, what the sutra really is. The Lotus Sutra is, and I've said this in other talks, the Lotus Sutra is mind itself. And, you know, as in the Awakening of Faith, it's one mind, or as Master Huang Bo says, the same mind, the mind of the Buddha and mind of sentient beings, same thing. This is something we're learning to understand and learning to accomplish. So when he says to attain the Lotus Sutra, well, what does that mean? And it's right here. You can see my cursor, the Shi Fa Wa Jing. Because why would we need to attain something that we already have? No, we are our innate Buddhahood. And of course, this is a big question that many have asked, especially Dogen Zenji. You know, if we are essentially Buddhas already, why do we have to practice? And of course, there's no simple answer in one sense, but we just have been misled, and we have developed habitual tendencies and wrong views about the world, and we are quite attached to that. So we can't see what's right in front of us in a dharmic way. So this quest to attain the sutra encompasses all of those activities, all of the things that a great bodhisattva and an ordinary sentient being have to do and have to continue. So that's what Samantabhadra is really saying. This has gone on since time without beginning, and it never ends. This acquisition, meaning the practice of the Lotus Sutra. And as it says in chapter 5, we are huaren, flowering beings. So flower is really a verb. And I think that's important to understand as we read the sutra. So the next thing that happens in the sutra are the 4 conditions for acquisition. And this may be the most important point within the chapter. So, so it says the Buddha said to Bodhisattva, universal worthy, if good men and women will fulfill 4 conditions in the time after the thus come one has entered extinction. Remember, the sutra is very concerned, if you will, about when there's no Buddha that you can actually see. And, you know, what extinction actually means is another question. But for us, we don't encounter Buddhas in ways that we really think we're encountering Buddhas, even though perhaps encountering everyone here, we're all Buddhas. We don't usually react that way. So they're very interested. Samantabhadra really wants to show what will happen after that. So in order to acquire this Lotus Sutra, first, they must be protected and kept in mind by Buddhas. Second, they must plant the roots of virtue. Third, they must enter the stage where they are sure of reaching enlightenment. And fourth, they must conceive a determination to save all sentient beings. So if you just to look at the Chinese, where it says Wei Zhuhuo Hu Nian, that way I find very interesting. So it's kind of saying that the Buddha has to keep us in mind. So this is actually a continuous reality, that we are of the mind, in the minds of the Buddha. And I think what's important about this point is that this is something that we should recognize, that we are, you know, the Buddha has our back, so to speak. So that's, and it's also translated as safeguarding us. So that's the first thing. And then the second one is to plant virtuous roots. And this is something we're always trying to do, which is, this is about Shila, this is about comportment, this is about proper conduct, and upholding and practicing and teaching the 5 precepts. This is the foundation which our practice lies upon. And then third is to, and it is about samadhi, is about working with our minds, controlling our minds, and of course, by extension, deeply understanding our minds. So this thing is both samatha and vipassana, true practice. And then finally, it's developing a mind of bodhicitta towards all sentient beings. This is how we should orient ourselves. And these 4 conditions, these 4 teachings or practices, are in themselves the acquisition and the living presence of the Lotus Sutra. And as I've said in other talks, sort of one of my pet peeves about scholars who think that the Lotus Sutra is continually self-promoting. And as I've said before in the past, the Lotus Sutra doesn't have a self. So it's not like the Lotus Sutra is trying to sell merchandise or get people to wear Lotus Sutra t-shirts. It's way beyond that. So the sutra is really what it's promoting is mind itself, if you will. The sutra is showing us the true nature of our existence. So we go now to I'm sorry, this was those are the 4 conditions. And then now here is Samantabhadra's vow of protection for upholders. And actually, I think it's good to, I don't know what this is going to do. What I'm going to do is stop sharing for 1 second. And because I have it in another place. 1 second. And this is something, I mean, all of us Chan practitioners know, but I think it's important to know Samantabhadra's 10 vows that come from the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is paying homage to all Buddhas, praising all Buddhas, making abundant offerings, repenting all evil deeds, rejoicing in the good deeds of others, requesting the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma, requesting that Buddhas do not enter nirvana, but continue to teach, and to follow the teachings of the Buddhas at all time, to benefit all beings, and finally, to transfer merit to all beings for the sake of their awakening. And I think you have to keep those in mind as Samantra tells about these specific vows that he's enunciating here in the sutra. So let me go back to sharing. Okay. All right. So, first, Samantabhadra talks about being in an evil age, and this is evil and corrupt age. And unfortunately, I think many of us can relate to that here now in 2022, even though this sutra dates back, who knows, a couple thousand years. So, but whatever state you're in, evil, good, or whatever, now to accept and uphold the sutra, right? Accepting means really opening up to what the sutra could be, also at whatever level that you're at, right? So in the in chapter 2, Expedient Means of the Lotus Sutra, it talks about all the ways that you can embark on the Buddha way through a variety of practices, building stupas, but even composing music, making a drawing, nodding your head. Of course, with a very special understanding that those kind of actions are in the direction of true practice, of true understanding. So it's really a very wide net what to accept the sutra is, and uphold by the same token. It's show in Chinese to accept or receive, and chur in Chinese to uphold, meaning to try to live a moral life that is dedicated to practice, to purifying the mind. So Samantabhadra, along with those vows that I just read, that will guard and protect him and free them from decline and harm, and see that he attains peace and tranquility, and make certain that no one can spy out and take advantage of his shortcomings. I mean, there's a wonderful psychological depth here of the degree to which Samantabhadra understands how our minds work, and how many fears we have, and our insecurities. Now, few of us, I imagine, have to deal with devils, devil sons, and all of these other nasty beings, beings that torment humans and try to take advantage of us. So this is Samantabhadra's vow, and this is something. It's not just that he from afar protects us. This is certainly one understanding, but also that we are given, or the ability to have fearlessness is kindled within us. So we do this ourselves. So there is this Jiriki, Tariki in Chinese, Sili and Tali, self and other power, but ultimately self and other disappear in the non-duality, which is really something, is the plane from which the Lotus Sutra is preaching. So now he continues his vow: whether that person is walking or standing, if he reads and recites the sutra, I will mount my six-tusked kingly white elephant, and with a multitude of great bodhisattvas proceed to where he is, and offer alms. And so that's the first thing. So let's just talk about this white elephant. It's interesting, in the West, a white elephant is something that you really don't want. It's something you can't take care of. But this is a sign of a great spiritual power. And the six tusks. Now, once again, we can place sort of a game of allegory with this, and say that the six tusks represent the six paramitas. But then you can sort of say, well, so what? So perhaps we're saying there's really one paramita, which is one of the teachings. Also, the six tusk in the Vajrayana can represent variety of ways of seeing the gateways that have been blocked in a practitioner, and they're one by one opened up. That's another understanding of this six tusks. And just like Sigmund Freud once said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and we can look at the greater understanding of what Samantabhadra is and not get caught up in the symbol, but it is definitely something we can look into. So, and then later on in this paragraph, very interesting, he says, if that person is seated and ponders the sutra, and I think in Chinese it has the yen, the thought of the sutra, he will also manifest in his presence. And Master Sheng Yen, on his chapter about this chapter, talks about the personal nature of Samantabhadra, actually helping in very deep, intimate ways with the practitioner, even to the point, I think this is rather remarkable in the sutra. If that person should forget a single phrase or verse of the Lotus Sutra, I will prompt him and join in teaching and reciting, so he will gain an understanding. So once again, this is what's so wonderful about this teaching and about Buddhism. There's no sense that Samantabhadra is looking at himself, right, since he doesn't have a particular view of self, as someone, as a superior being. He's right there with anyone who is trying to practice sincerely. And then it goes to another deeper level, if you will, where Samantabhadra says, at that time, the person who accepts, upholds, reads, and recites the Lotus Sutra. So there's a variety of ways that you can approach it. So if all of these words, accept, uphold, read, recite, and sometimes teach, there's a vast amount of room for ways to practice. And then I mentioned this in my last talk about seeing my body. This is not, you know, we all have statues of Buddhas. This is about really seeing the Dharmakaya, really seeing and experiencing. Seeing is once again a word from our language that we're saddled with. This is beyond our normal 5 or 6 senses. So, and they'll be filled with great joy, and then apply themselves with either even greater diligence. So there's an exhortation and support that is helping the practitioner. And then we have to talk a little bit about the samadhis and the dharanis. And there is there are many samadhis that have been mentioned throughout this sutra with very long, fancy names, and which most of us don't really experience. I certainly don't. And dharanis are actually, in a way, is the experience of seeing. Once again, I'm talking about seeing in a very general sense. Seeing could be hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, of actually beholding the Buddha or Samantabhadra in true form, which is at this point for most of us is beyond our understanding. But the samadhis and the dharanis are given to us. There were a number in the chapter 26, and here is this one which I am. Let's see. Well, we'll get to that soon. But what I think these represent are tools for greater understanding, for progress in the practice, and most importantly, for helping others to have clear ways of understanding other sentient beings so that we can reach them. So that's what the word is, a repetition dharma, a dharani. It's right up here. I think there's the Tuolani, and oh, there it is. This one, Tuan, Baichan Wan Chuan, Tuolani. And I think that this is much like the samadhi of innumerable meanings. It's just a very flexible, penetrating understanding. So, practitioners will acquire dharani such as these. Now here's an intensive practice in an age of an evil age, and here Samantabhadra is talking about practicing for 21 days, and I think we should not take this too literally, even though there's a whole Lotus Sutra samadhi and very ritualized practices. I think for our purpose, it's an understanding of retreat, intensive practice, and doing it, with a wholehearted mind. And then Samantabhadra Bhadra says, when the 21 days have been fulfilled, once again, he mounts his 6-tusked white elephant, and And then once again with his body, that all living beings delight to see. And once again, this is not a visual experience per se, but it's described as that. And he manifests right in the presence of the person, preach the law to him, bringing him instruction, benefit, and joy. And, you know, we can ponder if we've been in the presence of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Remember, there's this story of a Sangha trying to see Maitreya by meditating in a cave for I can't remember how many years, and then there's a whole story of how at last Maitreya appeared to him. But Maitreya did say, "I was standing right next to you all that time, and you didn't see me." So, you know, there's once again, there's a lot of flexibility in how we understand this. So Samantabhadra is saying, "I will also give him Dharani spells," and once again, these are of a protective nature. And so he cannot be confused or led astray by women, or women will not be led astray by men. I want to add that. And so I too will personally guard him at all times. And so now he's giving the Dharani, which I'm just not going to do right now because it would take time, and I'm not sure I would pronounce it right. There it is in Chinese, and of course this is available to anyone, and there are some readings of it on YouTube. So now, this is also very interesting in terms of our understanding of our abilities in our practice. One thing that the sutra, many sutras are talking about as an impediment, as a problem in our practice, is arrogance. So the idea that I have acquired all these things, so therefore I am so wise and I am so powerful. This is arrogance. So here, Samantabhadra is talking to Shakyamuni and saying, "World honored one, if any bodhisattva is able to hear these Dharanis, he should understand that it is due to the transcendental power of universal worthy." And once again, Samantabhadra is not tooting his own horn. He's showing and telling subtly about causes and conditions, that we are all in a great dream of becoming. That's what our practice is, becoming universally connected to everything and everyone. And so by giving us this reminder, it can deepen the practice and also help us, which is very important, to get loose from our attachments, which become subtler and subtler, and sometimes stronger as you practice. So if when the Lotus Sutra is propagated through Jambudvipa, right, this is the continent where we live according to Buddhist cosmology, which is right on the edge of Mount Sumeru. So this is all due to the authority and supernatural power of the universal worthy. And so that understanding is very important if it's approached properly. So then he says, if there are those who accept, uphold, read, and recite the sutra, memorize it correctly, understand its principles and practice, as the sutra prescribes, these persons should know they are carrying out the practices of universal worthy himself. And this is a message to show that ultimately, you know, we are Samantabhadra, we are the Lotus Sutra, we are Buddhas. And so this is a graduated way of showing us this. So in the presence of immeasurable, boundless numbers of Buddhas, they will have planted good roots deep in the ground, and the hands of the thus come ones will pat them on the head. The patting on the head is kind of a funny expression. The Chinese is like shomo, right? Chito. It doesn't sound so cutesy, I think, in Chinese, but the meaning behind it is this acknowledgement. You know, we're acknowledging the Buddha is acknowledging us. There's this mutuality. So now, comparative benefits. So here, Samantabhadra says that if you just copy the sutra, you will have enormous benefits, and at the end of your life, reborn in the Triyastrimsa heaven. And once again, we can understand this as gaining benefit, understanding. I don't know that we have to take this that literally, because it's really beyond our understanding. We can't authenticate this at this moment. But just so you know, the Triyastrimsa heaven is kind of a second heaven, and it's actually sometimes equated with Mount Olympus in Greek mythology, interestingly enough. And the gods in that world, this is the Deva realm, are still caught up in ordinary life struggles, and they are beset by the Asuras, the angry gods. So it's certainly a step up, but it's no picnic. So then, now, if you once again, as they say, small doubt, small enlightenment, great doubt, great enlightenment. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it. So now, besides just copying, if you accept, uphold, read, and recite the sutra, memorize it, understand its principles, and practice it as the sutra prescribes. So this time, when your life comes to an end, you're at the Tushita heaven, which is, even though it's still in the realm of samsara, but it's really next to an exit sign in a way, because that's where the Bodhisattva Maitreya, he's Bodhisattva now, not yet the Buddha Maitreya. He is residing there, and he's already possessing the 32 features of a Buddha. And he is someone who is transcended desire and wanting and thirst. So this is a much better place to be, much further on the path. And one thing, as an aside, I think it's interesting to look at the sociological aspect of how we encounter the sutras, because we encounter them in translation. So I just want to read a passage. This is from Leon Hurwitz, 1974. And so he says that this is in the Triyastrimsa heaven. So at that time, 84,000 goddesses making music with a multitude of instruments shall come to receive him. That man shall straightway don a crown of the 7 jewels, and among the women of the harem shall enjoy himself and be gay. So that's, and that, of course, gay in 1974 just meant happy. But the idea of being entertained by women in a harem, it seems very much out of character with a sutra. So now here's a translation from 2019 by Shinozaki, which styles itself as a gender neutral translation. Even if people only copy it when their lifetimes come to an end, they will be born in Triyastrimsa heaven. And on that occasion, 84,000 heavenly beings, right, no gender, performing all kinds of music will be there to welcome them, just welcoming. These people will put on crowns of the precious 7 and the precious 7 jewels, and pleasantly enjoy themselves in the company of refined attendants. How much greater then will be the merits and benefits of those who receive, embrace, read, and recite this sutra, rightly bear it in mind, comprehend its meaning, and practice it as taught. So I think it's quite interesting to see how people get caught up in the language of the sutra, and then you have to figure out what to do with it, especially when you're presenting it. So that there's the translation I'm using here is Burton Watson, which I find to be fairly neutral, and then Leon Hurwitz. I mean, it's not ancient, it's 1974, and there's certainly earlier translations. But you can just see how sociological factors come into play. So and then we go to, now we're talking about time itself and the reality and the illusion of time, because some mantras vow to propagate the sutra after Shakyamuni's extinction. And so therefore persons of wisdom should single-mindedly copy the sutra themselves or cause others to copy it, should accept, uphold, read, and recite it, memorize it correctly, and practice it as the sutra prescribes. World-honored one. I now therefore employ my transcendental powers to guard and protect this sutra. So we have an understanding of what protection is, but also an understanding that the nature of the protection is perhaps beyond how we would understand it cognitively and emotionally. But once again, in terms of our reading, practicing the sutra, and establishing faith in the practice, this is very good to know. And after the thus come one has entered extinction, I will cause it to be widely propagated throughout Jambudvipa, and we'll see that it never comes to an end. Okay, so now, once again, the mutuality, the rapport, the correspondence that is shown in the sutra is really remarkable. How everybody is interacting with everyone else on the highest level, and they're all literally on the same page in the sutra, all really supporting us and each other. So at that time, Shakyamuni spoke these words of praise. Excellent, excellent, in Sanskrit, sadhu, sadhu, universal worthy. You are able to guard and assist this sutra and cause many living beings to gain peace and happiness and advantages. You have already acquired inconceivable benefits and profound great pity and compassion. Another translation might not use pity, but compassion, certainly. Since long ages in the past, you have shown a desire for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, highest perfect enlightenment, and have taken a vow to use your transcendental powers to guard and protect this sutra. Once again, not so much the sutra itself, but what's behind the sutra. The Dharmakaya, mind, emptiness. It's all the columns supporting the sutra, if you will. And I will employ my transcendental powers to guard and protect those who can accept and uphold the name of Bodhisattva, universal worthy. So we see that this teaching is given by Samantabhadra, but in many ways, it's also directly coming through Shakyamuni. Once again, more ways of shoring up the support that we can understand the sutra is giving us. Now, direct connection to Shakyamuni through embrace of the sutra and the bestowal of his blessings. Universal worthy, if there are those who accept, uphold, read, and recite the sutra, memorize it correctly, practice and transcribe it, you should know that such persons have seen Shakyamuni Buddha. Once again, kind of a direct encounter the sutra is describing. Not just words, but a direct encounter with the Buddha. It is though they heard the sutra from the Buddha's mouth. You should know that such persons have offered alms to Shakyamuni Buddha. And this is things that we may have been doing, unknowingly. Right? You should know that the Buddha has praised such persons as excellent. You should know that such persons have been patted on the head by Shakyamuni Buddha. You should know that such persons have been covered in the robes of Shakyamuni Buddha. So this is the blessing. And once again, a difference between merit and blessing. Blessing, of course, is that you're bestowed very favorable attributes in your life. And this will be announced a little bit later in this chapter. Merits are more understood as karmic intervention, things that where your life is really turning around. But that's really what's happened. So it's deeper than just a blessing. It's really merit. We are acquiring merit and turning that around and sharing it with everyone. So So for the fine moral attributes of practitioners, uprightness, thirstlessness, and carrying out Samantabhadra's practice. So now those practitioners who are on board will no longer be greedy for or attached to worldly pleasures. They will have no taste for the scriptures or the jotting of non-Buddhists. They will take no pleasure in associating with such people or with those engaged in evil occupations, such as butchers, raisers of pigs, sheep, chickens, or dogs, hunters, or those who offer women's charms for sale, really showing the dark side of conduct. These persons will be honest and upright in mind and intent, correct in memory, and will possess the power of merit and virtue. They will not be troubled by the three poisons, greed, hatred, and ignorance, nor will they be troubled by jealousy, self-importance, ill-found conceit, or arrogance. These persons will have few desires, will be easily satisfied, and will know how to carry out the practices of universal worthy. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory of how the benefits and the intervention, the turning around of someone's life that occurs on this path. So now, so after extinction, for the sutra upholder, perfect practice, conquest of evil, worth of assembly. So universal worthy, after the thus come one has entered extinction in the last 500-year period, if you see someone who accepts, upholds, reads, and recites the sutra, you should think to yourself, before long, this person will proceed to the place of practice, conquer the devil hosts, and attain Anuttara Samyak Bodhi. He will turn the wheel of Dharma, beat the Dharma drum. This is where we get our name, our retreat center. I believe Shifu took it from from the Lotus Sutra. He will turn the wheel of Dharma, beat the Dharma drum, sound the Dharma conch, and rain down the Dharma rain. And these are not just idle metaphors. These are all the different ways that, in metaphor, if you will, that the Dharma can reach us, whether it's in words or actions or actually behavior, teaching by example. This is all what's being referred to in these metaphors. So he is worthy to sit in the lion seat of the Dharma amid the great assembly of heavenly and human beings. So once again, more authentication for us. So in later ages, rewards for practice, the quelling of greed, hatred, and ignorance, good fortune. So universal worthy in later ages, if there are those who accept, uphold, read, and recite this sutra, such persons will no longer be greedy for or attached to clothing, bedding, food, drink, or other necessities of daily life. It doesn't mean that they won't need them and they won't use them in many ways, but they'll be more content with what they have. Their wishes will not be in vain, and in this present existence, they will gain the reward of good fortune. And that's more on the blessing level. We'll see that in a moment. That line should really be over there. So if there's anyone who just, look at that, I was able to change the sutra. Once. This is editing on the fly. Okay. If there's anyone who disparages or makes light of them, these practitioners, saying you are mere idiots, it is useless to carry out these practices. In the end, they will gain you nothing. Then as punishment for his offense, that person will be born eyeless in existence after existence. But if there's anyone who offers alms to them and praises them, then in this present existence, he will have manifest reward. It's Jinchi Shen Guo Bao, right, in Chinese. I want to speak a little bit about that. So we really get this big time in the third chapter with people who disparage the sutra. The terrible things that happen life after life are really enumerated. And I think it's important just to say that the sutra is telling you it's not a good idea to disparage the practice in general. And eyeless could be understood in many different ways, in that they won't really gain an understanding. But I think it's interesting to look at the phrase in Chinese, De Xian Guo Bao, because in the second chapter of the sutra, when it talks about the 10 suchnesses, right, which are Shang Xing, Qi, Li and Zuo. So that's characteristic. This is things as they are in this moment. They have characteristics, they have a nature, they have embodiment, which sort of includes everything, potential and influence. So that's the first half of the five suchnesses. The second are yin yuan guo bao, and then ben lai zhou jing deng. So that's cause, condition, result, reward, and then the last one, which is really remarkable, really says that all of the above are the same. So this is how the sutra is really presenting non-dualism. But what's the difference between a result and a reward? So an example is, if you're in Florida and you're walking through an orange grove and it happens to be a very cold day and there's frost on the oranges, which is a result of a myriad of causes and conditions in the weather. And you're walking there and you're looking at the beautiful white frost on the oranges, just saying this is really lovely. Whereas the grower of the orange is in a panic because that frost could destroy his oranges. So it's the same result, but the reward, the circumstances of how it actually incorporates into your life, weaves into your activities, right? It could be very different. So what the sutra is saying is not only are you getting good results, but the good results will also be beneficial. So it's really shoring up the authenticity of what will happen. And then here's more of the dire retribution to the denigrators of the sutra and the great respect for the upholders. If anyone sees a person who accepts and upholds the sutra and tries to expose the faults or evils of that person, whether what he speaks is true or not, right? They're really, looking at the attitude of the person who is disparaging. He will in his present existence be afflicted with, and now there's a whole host of horrible things: white leprosy, teeth that are missing or spaced far apart, ugly lips, a flat nose, hands and feet that are gnarled or deformed, and eyes that are squinty, foul odor, blood and pus and blood, and water in the belly, shortness of breath, and severe and malignant illnesses. There's a person really in bad shape. And once again, these physical attributes, which are self-evident, are really pointing to more of spiritual affliction. And once again, I think you can take this as simply as a warning, and we really don't know what happens in terms of our karmic actions, but it's a useful thing to see, that simply to exhort us to practice in a wholesome, beneficial way. But then it says, and this is interesting thing about the chapter, therefore, universal worthy, if you see a person who accepts and upholds the sutra, you should rise and greet him from afar, showing him the same respect you would a Buddha. And by the way, this word accept, show, appears 15 times in this chapter, more than any time else in the entire sutra. So once again, somewhat giving the lie to the sutra as kind of promoting itself, whatever in the world that might mean. Here it's really talking about the efforts that practitioners make. And this is a fitting thing for the final chapter. And then here are the spiritual powers obtained by bodhisattvas upon preaching the sutra. When this chapter on the encouragements of the Bodhisattva universal worthy was preached, bodhisattvas immeasurable and boundless as Ganges sands acquired dharanis, allowing them to memorize 100, 1,000, 10,000, 1 million repetitions of the teachings. Once again, innumerable ways of reaching people. And bodhisattva equal to the dust particles of the 1,000,000,000-fold world perfected the way of universal worthy. And so finally, when the Buddha preached this sutra, universal worthy and the other bodhisattvas, Shariputra and the other voice hearers, along with the heavenly beings, dragons, human and non-human beings, the entire membership of the great assembly were all filled with joy, accepting and upholding the words of the Buddha. They vowed in obeisance and departed. So that concludes this chapter, and it's the final capping of the entire sutra. And I think actually next semester I'm going to be talking about the preceding sutra of immeasurable meetings, and then the concluding sutra, which is Samanprabhadra's practices, and where I'll say more about the sutra as a whole and how perhaps we might approach it. But I hope in going through this in as close a detail as I possibly could, for me, this has been a really wonderful journey. I have read the sutra obviously many times before, and read each chapter probably 10 times. Each time it's new, each time I'm learning something, and each time when I'm presenting it, I'm presenting my understanding right off the press. Tomorrow, I don't know, I'll look at it and who knows what I will see that I hadn't seen before. And one of the things that I really like to do is just encouraging people to study this sutra and other sutras, to see how worthwhile they can be, and how the sutra can help you uphold your practice, and your practice can help you penetrate the sutra. And it's just a wonderful gift. That's why it's called the Three Jewels. So let me just give the closing of the liturgy. May the virtuous merits adorn and purify the Pure Land of the Buddhas. Upwardly, we repay the 4 layers of gratitude. Downwardly, we alleviate the suffering of the 3 destinies. May those who see and hear the Dharma generate Bodhi mind, exhausting this body of retribution. May we be reborn in the land of extreme bliss. So thank you, everyone, and I hope we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Harry. This is really a monumental work that you just did. It's so wonderful. Each time I listen to it, I really gain a lot from you. And also, it's really a testimony of you're giving us that how you actually should study the sutra. And you yourself just said each chapter you read probably 10 times or if not more. It's just so this kind of time, effort, the way you put in is what really inspired me myself, and I think we really should learn from you for that. Not to say the content that you provided to us is really a great treasure. So for that, I'm really grateful to you, and thank you so much for
Thank you.
your.
Thank you, everybody. And remember, everybody here is part of this.
Absolutely. So if any one of you have any questions, please unmute yourself, and you can just start asking your questions. Let's see. I think there's so much to think about, and people probably is wondering so many questions. I don't know which one to ask first.
Yeah, well, there is a lot, and it's a lot to digest, but it's also not something we don't have to burden ourselves. We really have to understand our capacity, and what we can and what we can't do, and know, as I said, know that the Buddha's got our back.
Yeah, that is really assuring. That really always moves me, to know that. And also humbled me to say that, you read the sutra and say, actually, the reason that you're able to practice all that, it is because the power of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Yeah, that's really true. It's really
So,
true.
Um,
Oh, wait, here's Miranda. Oh, hi,
Miranda, raised
How are you?
Yeah, please
Yes.
unmute yourself, Miranda.
Thank you very much. I can't express how grateful I am to be able to be here and listen to Harry Miller on the Lotus Sutra. One really interesting thing has come up is the mention of 10 vows of Bodhisattva Samantabhadra.
Mhm.
So I do the recitation of the 10 vows every day in my morning service. However, I'm such a I don't think I am following any of the vows at all. And I realize that I realize that I have been in violation of all the vows. And in doing so, I guess I have been very how would I say this? I have been sort of punishing myself and say, oh, there you go again. You know, don't you know this? Harry Miller said this before, or whichever venerable said this before. And so according to all the different stories and all the different lessons that different bodhisattvas have been giving us and telling us, I guess the hardest part is to uphold these vows and uphold whatever we've learned, especially in our daily lives. So how would you advise us?
Well, you know, it's a wonderful question. Thank you, Miranda. What I advise, you know, I remember Sherfu once saying, and really you have to understand this in context, that vows were made to be broken, in that the vow is an aspiration, right? We don't know at any given moment what we can or can't do. We don't know. We can examine our minds and see what kind of fears are present in a given moment and see perhaps something might be easily done. And we just have to recognize that a silly fear is stopping us. Or we might have really deep karmic blocks that have been with us, who knows, for how many lifetimes. And that's not easy for us. The vows are a tool for us to try to learn and to aspire. They're always meant to be encouraging. You know, remember there were 5,000 monks and nuns that walked out of the Buddha in chapter 2, as if this were a continuing saga. But the teaching is that they came back in the Nirvana Sutra, right? So what you think is a failure is not a failure. Actually, one quote Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison said, "I haven't failed. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work." So the vows we make are finding all these ways that don't work, right? That's, but we don't know. We don't know until we try.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
I shall continue on my path.
Oh.
And thank you very much for a great Christmas gift, Santa Miller.
Well, thank you, Miranda.